Hello, friends, and welcome to Page Turning Comics and Manga Pick of the Week, episode 23. And I'm here with Mike. Mike, thanks for coming back again. I didn't scare you off.
Yes, I was going to say the same to you, that I didn't scare you or make you think twice. Yeah, real happy to be back here.
No, I'm really glad you made it, and I was just making sure I didn't scare you away. But no, I'm excited. It's nice having someone to bounce ideas off of, rather.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're okay with somebody being like a almost complete noob, I feel like sometimes. I mean, I do. This has been a recent interest of mine just over the past few years, but doing the actual getting into a comic shop and going through the process has been. I'm asking the dumbest questions when I go in there. So, but it's at this point, I don't care.
Yeah, no, I think they're just probably happy you're there at all. So I don't think they mind answering your questions. But no, so yeah, both of us are getting back into comics or just getting into comics. And every week we come and we talk a little bit about the books we picked up and whether or not we'll continue reading them. And at the end, we'll finish up with our pick of the week for this week. So, Mike, you want to start us off with, and then plus, we try to read at least one Capes and Cowls book, typically. Like, we'll try and find something, if something appeals to us even a little bit, just to give it a try. So, Mike, I think you had a Capes and Cowls, you had a one this week, right?
Yes, I did. I chose Thunderbolts, #1 from Marvel, by Kelly Lansing Borges and Hesley. And on the cover it says, "The Red Skull must die," just to give somebody a little peek. And that kind of appealed to me in some ways. I will admit I did not recognize the main character on the front cover, but quickly learned after I took the book home that it was Bucky Barnes. So Bucky Barnes, who is, I guess, the Winter Soldier, is a Thunderbolt. And I didn't know who the Thunderbolts were. I hear there may be a movie coming out or something.
Oh.
That's what somebody told me. So that's not necessarily the reason I bought it. I think the Thunderbolts are from that crew of, Captain America, Steve Rogers, etc. And there's some new characters that are, I don't know if they're part of this team or not. But there were quite a few new characters. I would say overall it was okay for me. It's not necessarily my thing. The pacing, one thing that really struck me for this one is the pacing it's really fast. There's just a lot that happens in a short period of time. And I kind of had some difficulties kind of keeping up with the story. And then one thing I noticed is that is not in any of the other comics I've read, is that certain expletives or curses are like redacted. I don't know. There's one character in particular, and it's kind of I don't know if it's a reveal, so I won't say the character's name, but they use a lot of blocked out swear words. But generally, I think I think the highlight is this particular character that I maybe I will say the name. The character is named Destroyer, and so they get introduced within the first few pages. But it's really kind of the Bucky Barnes character is kind of reuniting with different members of his crew. At times it's a little bit hokey, but yeah, and then the ending was kind of like it was okay, but so it's not a spoiler because it's on the front cover, but the Red Skull makes an appearance, and so there's that association with the bad guys from World War II, the Nazis and whatnot, is in there, and we've seen a lot of that over the years, right? But So I'm not sure how much is new, but there was some things that I liked. A few of the characters that I didn't know that were new to me, I liked. In particular, this female character. So
Hmm.
that's my take on it. I don't think I'll continue. I don't think so, but you never know.
Hmm. So it's not a definite no way. It's a maybe that you'll continue.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other. I think we've talked about this. Is that we may try to pick one more traditional superhero book, and there are always quite a few. So I'm not, you know what I mean. So if there's something that
Hmm.
looks more appealing, I don't know. So it's hard to tell.
That's fair, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Yeah. So my capes and cowls, and I kind of cheated on this one because whenever I scan the shelf and I try and look for something that's superhero ish that doesn't look too goofy. But I always end up going for something Batman related because I feel like something will appeal to me. And of course, the cover on Batman 140 by Chip Zdarsky and Jorge Jimenez by DC Comics, it appealed to me because it's Joker and Batman, and there's a whole nother thing about Joker and Batman. I have my opinions on that, the whole thing. But this is part two of a story. So I was a little bit lost, a little, because I wasn't sure what the first issue was. But wasn't exactly sure what was happening, but I kind of had fun with it. It's Batman versus the Joker, and it's also Batman versus his own mind. I think he's hallucinating or working through something else. So we have an internal struggle with Batman, and he's reflecting on the things that he should or shouldn't be doing, and also what he should or shouldn't do with the Joker to stop him, how far he should go, or how far he should go with the criminals that he interacts with, period, really. So I think there are some interesting questions there on what Batman's role should be when he catches someone or when he interacts with a person that is out to hurt other people. So I thought it was okay. I mean, I wasn't crazy about it. I was a little bit lost, but I didn't hate it. So I thought, I thought it was okay. So whenever I have any doubts about what to get, I'll always kind of gravitate towards like Detective Comics or Batman, just because I kind of feel like something will be okay. Like I'll halfway enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, it was fine. I thought it was all right.
Yeah. Just one question for you. So did the writer's name appeal to you? Because I think Chip Zdarsky is pretty well known.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Chip Zdarsky. She's better with the names. The names. Whenever I see an author that I recognize or I've heard about before, I'm a little bit more likely to pick it up. So it did help that it was a recognizable name too. So, and I enjoyed the art. The art was fine, and so yeah, I thought it was okay. I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. So I think this week I have 10 books, and I think you have 5. So I'll grab a couple that I've been reading. So the next book on my pile was Tenement number 6. This is by Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino, and Dave Stewart. This is by Image Comics. In this issue, we go deeper into our characters go deeper, and they find themselves facing their worst fears and their nightmares. I love the layouts and the use of color, but the story continues to just kind of leave me feeling like something's missing, or I think part of it has to do with the format, but the monthly format of a story like this, because you get bits and pieces it feels like a big story. And I think when you get bits and pieces and you have to wait for a month for the next bits and pieces, I think it can be, I don't want to say frustrating, but it can feel a little more confusing than reading it as a collection or a trade. So I'm trying to remember that as I read through this. And I think the confusion is part of the point. I think we're supposed to feel confused, but I can't help but think that I'm missing something. But I think it's supposed to be confusing and wondering what is going on. But yeah, I enjoyed. I like this creative team, and I like the what they're doing with it. So it's hard to go wrong with Jeff Lemire. So I will I'll continue and hope that it'll tie together in a nice little bow when it's done.
Is it the same team that did, what was it called? Gideon Falls? Am I getting the name right?
Same team.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might have mentioned that earlier.
No, I couldn't think of the name either. Yeah, Gideon Falls, and I just finished that that story. So it was a little bit up and down, almost like this one is. So I try to remember that if I was reading Gideon Falls on a monthly basis, and it would feel the same way. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to be patient with it. But yeah, so yeah, that's Tenement 6, and I'll continue. Another book I picked up that I just thought looked interesting to me was Orcs, the Gift, #1. This is by Christine Larson. This is by Kaboom Comics. This one, it struck me as a labor of love. It feels like it's like a lot of passion went into this one. Sometimes you can just feel that it's there's something about it that feels authentic. It feels like it's a lot went into it. I had that feeling that I don't get too often, but it got the passion behind it. Sadly, it's just not for me. It's a little too humorous. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that may be why I didn't like it, but it doesn't, it seems a little, it's not as dark. I guess I need a little bit of darkness in these kind of stories and these fantasy stories. I need a little bit of darkness mixed in with these for me to really dig my teeth in. So I think it was really, and the artwork, while good, it's very cartoonish, and it's just not what I typically enjoy. So I think I think the construction, the story, the artwork, it all fits, but it's just not the type of story that I typically enjoy. So I don't think I'll continue with this one, sadly.
That's interesting. I don't think I saw that one, and I might have picked it up if I did. Just a question for you. I wonder if does it have like a teen rating? Because I'm starting to notice that more. Is maybe that, I don't know what that dictates whether it will be more to your liking, like maybe more like a rated R type, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed. I think even there's another book that I really liked this week that was. It had a wink and a nod, and it was more of a dry humor. This was more of just a little silly, like it's a little goofy, but it's done purposefully that way. I think that's intentional. It's just not typically. So yeah, not typically what I gravitate towards. I need a little bit of brooding for me to get into these. So, it is what it is.
For me, it's a really good segue to the book that I'll be talking about, which is Barbaric. Mm-hmm. I think the subtitle is The Wrong Kind of Righteous, and it's from Vault, and the author is Nicholas Eames, who, for fantasy readers, they would know his name. He's well known for Kings of the Wild, and then that series. I think the series is called The Band. And then the other artists are Mordecai, Gooden, Duke, and Campbell. And yes, mispronunciations abound with me as well. So this is one of those things where I was like, so it's a one shot. Now I don't completely know what that means exactly. I think it's a kind of standalone. It's a double issue. Right. So it's quite a few pages. But I did notice that there are other Barbaric books by different authors. No Nicholas Eames. So but I have to admit, I couldn't tell that it was, because it kind of seems like it's picking up where a story left off. And a couple things that struck me right away, and it's very similar to what you just said, is it's really going for a lot of humor, like on almost every page. There's some reference or jokes, but it's modern day. So it's like 2023 or whatever, in a setting that's a fantasy setting that could most likely take place in the Middle Ages. So for me, I don't know. I could see it working, but it just wasn't hitting for me. And I do think it's targeted maybe to a younger audience, possibly. So I'll give an example where one of the characters says, "This party is dead anyway," which is kind of a reference to some of these. I think it's a reference to Swingers. I don't know if you saw that or not, Steve, but
okay.
I remember that from various. So I don't know if that's what Nicholas Eames was going for, but it just took me out of the story. And generally, like, one of the things is that I think in this book, there are these weapons that are like that can talk, and they say funny things or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I won't say too much more about that. Another thing that was also very modern was that they're eating food that's like today's like a hamburger, like a Big Mac or something. It's very early on in the story, and it just was like, I don't know. I could see it work for somebody else, but for me, was just a little bit of a slog to get through, and I just didn't. I will say the artwork at times is also somewhat, like you said, cartoonish a little bit, but there's some parts, some particular elements where it's very fuzzy or pixelated, and I don't know what they're going for. I think they're trying to showcase that certain things are like ghosts or whatever, but it just didn't look. Anyway, it was something that distracted me, I'll say. But so it's not a series that I will be continuing, I don't think, or find the back issues. However, maybe they're different because it's a different author, but I feel like the story it doesn't really know what it's supposed to be. It's just too many different, kind of a hodgepodge of different things for me.
Have you read Kings of the Wild or Eames's other books?
No, I have not. I've been meaning to, but for various reasons I haven't. I think part of the reason is I think his series is not completed, but that doesn't necessarily stop me. But no, I haven't. Have you?
No, I heard a ton of people that I know rave about it, and I was really interested in it. And then when I learned that it was more of a comedy, that it was more of like a band, like getting the band back together, and it was funny, that's not my bag. So I skipped it.
Okay, so I think it can be good, but I'm willing to give the book a try.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, I didn't realize he was writing comics. That's cool.
Yeah.
If I would have seen it, I would have given it a shot.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. He hasn't finished the third book for a while. I know that his fans are, anticipating for a while now.
You don't want to keep the fans waiting. They can get pretty nasty. Just ask George and
Rothfuss.
The other Name of the Wind, Rothfuss. Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of humor and picking things up on a whim, I did grab Creepshow: Tales of Suspense and Horror Holiday Special 1. This is by Image. I kind of thumbed through it, and I really like the artwork. It has really bold lines. It has this. Way back in the 90s, there was an artist named Mark Teixeira, if I'm mispronouncing his name. He drew Wolverine and some other books that I was into at the time. I really liked that art style, and it reminded me of that, so it kind of took me back to that. This became more of a slasher. It was very by the numbers, very predictable. It just didn't scratch that itch. It just wasn't. The humor just didn't hit for me. It was really forward, and it was. If you're into slashers, I think you'll really like it. But I'm not a fan of slashers at all, and it just didn't work for me. But again, if you're into slashers and that kind of like over the top humor, I think you might be into it. But yeah, that one was a miss for me.
Yeah, similarly, I'm not a huge slasher person, although back in the day when I was younger, that was about the only thing I was going for with, like I was really into, well, I don't know if he's considered a slasher or not. Freddy Krueger, is he? Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. Because he's also like a comedian, or he became one. Not in the first. He wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah, the 80s and the early 90s were really, there was lots and lots of slashers. So that's why I'm kind of surprised that I'm not into them, because I just wasn't a fan of horror movies at the time. So maybe it just didn't influence me in that way, but I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, sorry, one last question. They only had one story in this one. It wasn't like the Creepshow that I read that had two stories.
Oh, I had two.
Okay.
Had two separate stories. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the risk of picking up books like anthology books like this. While it's nice to have different stories, if both of them don't work for you, then it's even more of a bummer. Mm-hmm. And so neither of them worked for me. Although I did enjoy the artwork on both. That's kind of the risk you take, and it's also a risk, I think, for the creative team and for the whoever's publishing it, because if a reader like me picks it up and doesn't like one of the stories, you're hoping that the reader enjoys all of the stories, or at least enough to come back again the next month or the next time an issue drops. So I think it's a risk to do that. So I appreciate that they're doing this. I think it's nice to have the option to get an anthology, just to jump in and read a story and get out. I think it's nice to have those bite-sized stories, but again, it just fell flat for me. So another book I picked up this month that I think you had in your hands, and you decided not to pick it up, and I think you're probably okay. I'm referring to Our Bones Dust, #1. This is by Ben Stenbeck and Dave Stewart, and this is by Image Comics. So this one, it depends a lot on the artwork. There's not a whole lot of dialogue. When we do get dialogue in this landscape, you get the impression that these people don't, they speak in broken English, and it kind of reminded me of like Cloud Atlas or something like that, where the language is, you could tell that they don't communicate very often. So it's basically a wasteland. There's a young child, and there's bands like nomads, or people who are trying to survive. They're trying to find meat and water and just something to get by on. They're bartering to survive. There's also other beings that are observing. So while it is a wasteland and it feels almost like a Mad Max without the cars kind of feeling, it feels like a that type of hopelessness that you get. I think the book has some potential, but the story feels a little light. There wasn't a whole lot, and I think part of that is because I couldn't get attached to any of the characters. Even the what I think is the protagonist, the young boy, I think I didn't get enough of him, or there wasn't enough for me to really sink my teeth into it, and I need a character to sink my teeth into for it to really grab me. I think this one is doing some interesting things. I think it's when you have a #1 issue that you're trying to get off the ground. There's so many #1s. There's so many books to grab our attention. I think it's tough to give us enough to hook us, but not give us too much to ruin the rest of the story. So I think it's a tough thing to balance when you have a new series to hook the reader, but not give them too much. So this one I think is okay. I'll buy the next one. I'll pick up the next one. The artwork is beautiful. I think the art's great. I think it's the layouts and everything. I think all that was really neat. But again, it didn't blow me away, but it did enough for me to pick up issue 2. So I'm not counting down the days, but when I see it on the shelf, I'll grab it.
So you piqued my interest at Wasteland,
Oh, really?
yeah, and survival, and I like that kind of stuff.
Oh.
So I don't know what it. Yeah, I really surprised I didn't grab it. I think I actually will admit and I'll mention this in a moment, but I picked up all the back issues of Sacrificers as well, so that was maybe the reason. I just was like, maybe I'll run out of time, but I'm interested now actually. So I might,
Cool.
if it's still around, I might grab it.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah. Maybe we can catch up on that one eventually.
So I believe I'm going next, and I have another Vault release, which I believe came out. It might have come out in October, but the second issue has not been released. So the title is Unnatural Order #1 by Yost, Rodriguez, Kelly, and Andworld. And from the cover, I see these two female characters, and they're kind of being split in half by a tree. So I was like, well, this is interesting. But it's not necessarily. So when I started reading it, it was a little bit kind of threw me off a little bit, because it takes place in it takes place in 54 BC, during the time of when the Romans were, I think, conquering or cutting across into Britain, and what was Ireland at the time, I think, was called Hibernia. So it has that kind of, I don't know if you would call it historical fiction, but it certainly has fantasy elements. And so instead of these characters being from, made completely made up secondary world characters, you have a character that's a druid. You have a character that's like a Roman, what are they called now? Centurion, I think. Gosh. Mm-hmm. And then you have a few other characters from. One is like a barbarian, which is in a lot of these kinds of stories, but like a real barbarian, I think that's kind of sounding name, Germanic name. Anyway, so that was something that grabbed me, and it had a really, really haunting imagery, and so it has horror elements. I don't know if you'd call it horror or not. And so there's like the artwork is just, it has a very kind of ethereal element, like not very hard lines, maybe, and sometimes that really works. And I think so the artwork was working pretty well here for me. I actually didn't expect to like it for some reason, but it almost has an oil painting look in some. There's some parts, so I really appreciated it. The story is also, there's a lot going on. It's complex. As I mentioned, it has these different fantasy elements. It has kind of supernatural. Even there's like werewolves, and so there's really quite a mix of things. So maybe a little bit for everybody. I could see some people maybe not getting into that, but for whatever reason, it worked for me. And then the ending just kind of came out of nowhere, so it was pretty wild. I won't give it away, but if you think the story is going one way, it's going to subvert what you're thinking. I think so. I would love to continue with this. I hear the next book might be released in January. I'm not sure why there was a 2-month delay, but I don't really know how those things work. So yeah, again, I really liked it, and I'd love to continue with the series.
You sold me on it. I'm adding it to my list now. Yeah, it sounds really good. The like oil painting look and horror elements you had me there.
It's not all of it is. There's like some panels that are gorgeous, I think. However, it's to each his own, you know. So but I really enjoyed. It just took me, for whatever reason, at the time when I was reading it, I was like, I felt transported, and I think that's what we want sometimes, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, that immersion is very, I think the immersion is to like lose, you know, like I say lose yourself, but to be taken away to another place and to kind of fall into it like that. It's not too often that happens.
One thing I will caution anybody, and I know you know about this, Steve, the back of these Vault comics, they have a synopsis. They kind of tell you just about everything that happens. So if that's not your thing, don't read the back. Both because I have 2 Vault comics, 2 books, and it's the same. They kind of summarize just about everything. For some people, they like to know what they're getting into, but I don't think either of us want that so much.
No, I think we've talked about this before with the other series we're reading, Prince of Nothing, is I avoid synopsis, I avoid summaries, I avoid all that stuff, and just rely on other people just kind of blurbs or very quick reviews for most stuff. So yeah, that's a good thing to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited about that one now. I'm going to have to find it. So the next one on my list was Blood Commandment 2. And this story is about a father and son. And the father is hiding a secret. And it doesn't take too long to figure out what that secret is. But I'm in love with this artwork. The artwork is beautiful. It fits this story very well. It's a vampire story. It's very haunting and atmospheric. We continue with the father and son angle. We learn more about the father and the rest of their family, where the rest of their family went, his past, and also what's hunting him. And what I really liked about this one is that the first issue focused a lot on the father and son. And in this one, we learn more about the surrounding of the town that they're nearby. We meet other people in the town and other people who are becoming involved with the situation. So yeah, I think beautiful, beautiful artwork. This is by Simon Kudransky. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. This is by Image. Also, there's an imprint, One Man Art, and I think he does everything. I believe it. I think Simon does everything on this one. He's the only one listed on the list. So yeah, I'm beautiful book, and I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, I did see that one, and it was one of those where I thought, well, I missed number 1. So, but now I know that I could probably just go online, and that's probably what I'll do next time, and read the back issue online, because I have attempted to order things and it's not.
Yeah, I think this one you could probably jump in to issue 2 and know enough.
Okay.
There's not too many things that have been revealed yet, so I think if you missed issue 1, I think you could get into issue 2.
Okay.
Unless you're like me and you need to start at the beginning. Just one of those things. But yeah, great book. The other one that I picked up was Kill Your Darlings number 3. This is by Ethan S. Parker, Griffin Sheridan, and Robert Quinn. This is by Image Comics. This one, I just think this series has a lot of heart. It just has, you could tell, again, you get that feeling like there's a lot of passion and emotion put into it. And it just has that feeling like you care about the characters, and it can be, it grabs you in the feels. So in this one, our characters learn more about this fantasy world that has overlapped into their world. We learn more about the character's backstory. We learn more about this fantasy world that they venture into. We learn what's happening there, the dangers that are there. So this one, it's not, it's like I said, it just has a lot of charm and heart, and that's what keeps me interested in this one. The story expands, and this book as well. The story expands a lot in this issue. It grows in scope, and I'm anxious to see where it goes. It's going directions I didn't anticipate, but that's a good thing, and I'll keep reading this one. We're at a crossroads now, I think, in the story where, depending on where it goes, where it's what it's kind of setting up, we'll decide if I continue it or not. Just because it could go, I'm a little worried about where it could go, and if it does, then I might just have to drop out. But so far, the artwork again, and this one is beautiful, and there's some great humor in it. It is a dry humor, and that's usually my thing. So, yeah, the little bits and pieces of humor, the artwork, it's pretty good stuff. I've been enjoying this series so far.
Yeah, I just tried looking it up. It looks interesting. This is maybe you mentioned this before. Do we know the Darlings? Is it pretty evident what that title means from the get go, or?
I have some ideas on it. I think
okay.
I think I might know. And if the title makes me, I don't want to say nervous. The title makes me wonder, without giving anything away, the title makes me wonder what's really happening and what isn't happening. Mm-hmm. It makes you wonder if what we're reading is actually happening, or if this is some kind of hallucination or fantasy land that our character is living in, or a character is living in. So if they do twist it in a way that makes you question everything, it could be really heartbreaking if it is. But, and it does kind of play with that. Is this really happening? Is it not really happening? But I think so it could go either way with that, but I'm anxious to find out what the title means too.
I think Image just appeals to me. I'll give it a look. Mm. So I think we're back to me, and we're going to cover the next two books we both read. So there will be overlap if you've stayed with us this long. The listeners, I'm sure you're really pumped about our discussion here. I'm enjoying it. So the next another Image release is Bloodrick. That's one word, and it's just a single artist, Andrew Cranky, and it's Image number 1. So, yeah, this one I think is kind of like what you described earlier, Steve, in that there isn't some elements of, and I mean, it's actually said on the back of the cover, there's a little story from the author. I'm curious what you thought about that, where it is clearly one of those labors of love type of things with this character. And, it's, if you just need to take a quick look, and it's this big hulking barbarian looking guy, right? So I think you may or may not be interested just by looking at it, but I think it throws us off a little bit in that the story to me is very simple. The pacing is quite slow, but we just kind of start to get to know Bloodrick, who's really the main focus of the story, and has kind of survival elements. We don't really know why. We don't know where he's coming from. And so very much, to me, a slow burn. And so I there is an addendum at the end where it give you more backstory, but really it's more just kind of him surviving. And but I cannot tell if it's a fantasy. There's not any fantasy elements or magical elements that I noticed per se. And we just know that he's a hunter. So I will comment very quickly about the artwork. It's very rustic and in simple, but I think beautiful in some ways. The coloring is not, compared to some of these other books where you have all these vivid colors. That's not happening here, and I'm sure that's for a reason. So it's very, like, the one page will be very clearly influenced by a certain color palette, and the next one might be more, subtle. Anyway, I didn't mind that. It's just I don't know where it's going. It's just I don't know if it gave me enough. But I probably will continue. I'm really curious to hear what you thought, Steve.
Pretty similar to what you felt too. I think there's just something about the barbarian archetype, maybe because it reminds us of Conan or the simplicity of the character. Just like it's like you mentioned, it's simple, but I think there's a chance for it to become something more. But I don't know that there's not a whole lot of setup for anything. It's just him surviving. And I did, it seemed very, very straightforward, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just what it is. Like you said, the artwork is detailed. I think the detail in it, you can, like you mentioned, it's like you can tell that a lot of time and work went into it. And I love the little backstory on where Bloodrick started and kind of how it's evolved and it's become its own thing. So I think that's really charming. So yeah, I did like the end of the second story, the end of the second, I guess, chapter. I thought that was pretty neat, and I did wonder if Bloodrick is a real, if Bloodrick exists, or if he's just a story that people tell. Because I don't know. I think every story is told by someone else. Both stories are told by someone else. So I wonder if Bloodrick is a person or if it's just like a fairy tale that people tell.
Okay, I can see why you thought that too, because it kind of starts off that way from a narrator, an old man, kind of blacksmith character. I mean, it's on page 2, so we're nothing. No big spoiler at all. But yeah, there is definitely more to it. It's just, I think it's more visual than anything. And I think it's one of those where you kind of need to take your time and slowly imbibe what you're seeing. If you're just paging through it and reading, I don't think that's what this is about, because there's not a lot of dialogue at all. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I do like the design of the character, this big muscle-bound, but I always kind of laugh to myself when these big muscle-bound barbarians are wearing like a pair of underwear in like snow, It's like, yeah, but it is what it is. One of those things. I guess it's part of about being a barbarian is underdressing in cold weather. So
yeah, you got to show off your deltoids and your pecs and glutes and all of those wonderful things, none of which I possess, all covered in a pretty thick layer of flab. So
maybe if you were ripped, you'd wear underwear in cold weather too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's back to me. So now what I have is, I know Steve had quite a few different titles, but what I went and did is, with the new Sacrificers came out, which is from Image Comics. It's Rick Remender with Max Fiumara and Dave McCaig. And so we have the Sacrificers number 5, but I went and read 1 through 4 to get caught up with Steve. And I've heard you talk about the series. I think it probably went up and down for you. I do think you enjoyed it a little bit. So there was something that just piqued my interest, and so I went for it. And Rick Remender is one of those names as well. Although I've not read much by him, but I've been wanting to. So it was like, I'll give it a shot. And so I'll very quickly summarize what I thought of 1 through 4, and then get in a little bit more detail in number 5. But, right off the bat, I think I'm a sucker for, like animal or anthropomorphized characters if it's done well. And this has that. So it makes me think of, for example, Dark Crystal, the movie, which I watched as a kid in the theater. At the time, I loved it. I still think it's pretty good still today. So there's a lot of, to me, similarities to that film, which I think also was a book, or there was a novelization, but I never read it. But there's just from the get-go, I appreciated the world building, which I don't think you can get easily in comics, but it was done in a way where you're exposed to these different races of characters that are, like I said, different animals, but then there's human, and then there's these others that look like they're influenced by nature. Not to go into too much depth on that, but one is like a sun god character. But I think there's just I'm a big fan of the artist, but also I think the colorist. The coloring in this series is amazing. I think in particular when we get to the latest issue, we went from all these vibrant colors, a cornucopia or phantasmagoria, really of different characters and colors and different elements of this world, which we don't quite understand, but it's intriguing, to something that's like very muted and just dark tonally. So that impressed me, I have to admit. And I think the writing combined with the artwork shows what this medium can do, I think. So combining the visuals with the story, it achieved really wonderful things from the get-go for me. There's a lot of questions that, you don't really know what sacrificer means until I think issue 3 or 4. There's a lot, there is a bit of kind of drips and drabs and slow buildup, but it just made me want to continue. I'm glad I continued, or I'm glad I went ahead and took the plunge and got all 5 issues. I think there was a few moments where I felt the story could be very tragic. And so one thing I will say is it lulls you into thinking, oh, this is a sweet, childish place. And, these characters that are being taken and led somewhere. I didn't fall for it, but I think the fact that they're, representing different animals. So I also really loved Watership Down, by the way. Wanted to mention, makes you think, oh, they're, but there's some tragic stuff happening to these characters, and I don't really feel that too many people are safe either. So I think, I just want to say one last time, I think the visuals here just make you want to spend some time looking at the pages, and that does it for me. So I think that, again, that's what, and also some of the writing, I wrote down some quotes. I think one thing, this is in number 4, hatred is the exhaust of narcissism is a quote.
I had that quote written down too.
I was like, wow, there's some powerful stuff in here. That one character is one of the few that I think we probably admire more. So I might hand it over to you if you want to talk about number 5, because I spoke quite a bit. I didn't go break it down by 1 through 4. I just kind of summarized what I felt of the series so far. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you thought about the latest issue.
And this one's your pick, Sacrificers 5?
Yes, I'm biased in a way because I read from 1 through 5. I didn't, it wasn't over time. It was almost like reading a trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was sometimes when I thought, well, once I knew where we were getting to, I won't say I was let down, but there was some things about it, like I said earlier, that reminded me of other things. Even though so many elements were original, like I said, there's one aspect that is very similar to what happens in the Dark Crystal, and also characters. So it just reminded me of that, and then also Willy Wonka as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you summarized it very well. I think the first couple issues, I think, really struck me as being cinematic. Mm-hmm. Like they really told a story. They really do a great job in telling the story, moving you forward, and just it's not easy to do. I mean, we think of comics, and of course, it's a visual medium too, and I just think it does a great job telling the story. But yeah, the latest issue, I like that the focus has been shifted, mm-hmm. and we're leaning more into more like a political maneuvering, and leaning more into political intrigue. And we're still finding things out about the sacrificers and the festival. But yeah, I think where I thought this was going, where the story would go, isn't where it's going. And I really like that because it's going in directions I didn't expect. And like you mentioned, no one's safe.
No.
And I like that too. So I think it's really, I think it's doing a great job. I'm not sure I don't think it's a limited series. I think it's an ongoing, but it's doing a great job of laying that foundation of really a story that can go on for a long time.
Yeah, I think that what happens in issue 5 is we're delving into one character and getting maybe a little bit of the backstory, but there's so much potential to if that's where Rick Remender wants to go, to dig into any number of these different characters or races or what have you, because there's a lot of lore there. I think that they're giving us strips and drabs of. But one thing I noticed after I bought 5 single issues, I noticed that there was volume 1 available online. I don't know if that means that it's 1 through 5. I forgot to check, but it does say next issue, it's to be continued. So, it looks like it's going to keep going. So I've definitely added this to my pull list.
Nice. Well, it makes me feel good. I think whenever you recommend a book like that, whenever you talk up a book and someone says they're going to try it, there's always that, I hope you like it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you're going to like Unnatural Order either. But, I think there's just certain things that when you hear that, you're like, oh, okay. Like I know, what is one of the things I know you really like is a grief horror. So it's like, I think that sells you. In my case, I guess it's Wasteland and post-apocalyptic or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure. It changes. Yeah. We're all, we're different people from one day to the next.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a great series. It was very close to being my pick too.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Very close. It was my second one. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I think it's a fantastic series, and I think picking this up right around the time when the podcast started, it was a great kind of great timing that I think it's going to be a series that goes on for a while.
Okay.
So it'll be neat to be along for the ride on this one.
Great.
Yeah. So my pick was very unexpected. I just didn't expect at all to like this one as much as I did, which is Skeeters #1. This is by Kelly Williams, Bob France, Kevin Cuff, and Chaz Pangburn. This is by Mad Cave Comics. I just loved this. It was just fun. It reminded me of the film Slither. It's a horror story with a touch of dry comedy. The art is beautiful. Again, it has bold lines and muddy colors that fit the spirit of the book perfectly. It's a small town that has a secret lab. Almost, I hesitate to say Stranger Things-esque, but it has the same kind of, there's a lab in the small town, and they're running experiments, and something gets out of hand, and of course, bad things happen. They also call the secret lab the Sands, and I wonder if it's a reference to White Sands. Just curious for that one. But yeah, I wondered if that was a callback or a kind of reference to that. But I will say there is, for any of these stories for any of these stories, there has to be something to kind of, there has to be somebody who does something really dumb to let this bad thing out. And this one's pretty dumb. Like, so it was a little silly for the reason that these creatures get out was really silly. But I also get that it's just part of it. Like, that has to happen to kind of move the story forward. But that's the only complaint I had. I love the horror. I love the humor. I love the artwork. Just all the way around. Had a really good time with it. It's just fun. It knows what it is, and it's just embracing it. And I really like that and respect that. I'm along for this one. I hope it works out. I hope it continues to be this good. But yeah, I didn't expect to like it that much, but I'm on board. This one really, I just laughed and was horrified and just had a good time with it all at the same time.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at the cover, and it's pretty disgusting in a way, from what I could see. And in some ways, that appeals to some of us. And it's some type of insect themed horror. It can really get you. Sounds very creepy. But I think with the humor, yeah, I'm intrigued as well.
Yeah, I think overall pretty good week. I mean, I think nothing I really. There's a couple I didn't like too much, but nothing I just despised.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little hit and miss, but overall, I think pretty good week, I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree, and I really enjoyed. I think what I mentioned earlier is I've read mostly in recent years. I've not purchased the single issue comics hardly at all. So getting kind of reading the 1 through 5, versus imagining I'm just getting this once a month, reading the 1 through 5 Sacrificers, to me, I see that, at the end of each one, there's some cliffhanger or build up, and I see why that's more important for people that purchase these single issue comics, because there's a world out there, and I think there's also a lot of people that don't do that, and they just wait for it to come out. But it's a different experience. It's like I feel like we don't do that anymore in this world of binging and whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Just a question for you: Are you more of a binge person? Like, you like to watch, like if a TV series comes out, do you like to take your time?
Yeah, I used to. For a little while there, I was trying. I wouldn't say binge. I know there's some people who who when a new season would drop of whatever series they were watching would, like take 12 hours and just watch it.
Yeah.
Watch every episode back to back. And I was never doing that,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like the kind of the anticipation, because it gives you time to reflect and to, create theories, like something like Lost. If that would have been a series that we binged, it just wouldn't have the same impact as having time between each episode and coming up with crazy theories. And that, I think it adds to and it also adds to like people getting together and talking about it, and kind of that building anticipation, I think is important. So yeah, I think, it's tough too, because with a single issue, you have to keep the reader engaged and coming back, but you also have to think about long-term how it's going to fit into a trade.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a weird balance, to develop your story to end on a cliffhanger, to end with a hook or something to bring the reader back again the next month. But also you want it to flow in a trade when it's all collected. So it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And when you mentioned Lost, it made me laugh a little bit, because I watched it with my son over COVID during those times that we remember. But we took our time. So we had many theories, but there were so many things happening that don't quite get resolved too. So
there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
How'd you like Lost?
I gotta say, I liked it. I mean, I think, yeah, I wasn't really disappointed, because I didn't really feel like I need everything to be wrapped up. I don't want to. I'm not getting into the end or whatever, but the characters are really interesting. There were a few characters that, my son and I would talk about just during the, when we were dealing with whatever, all these other issues, and this, you get to know them, and everybody has something weird happening to them that just intrigues you. It wants to keep going. And yeah, I overall, I wouldn't say it's my favorite series of all time, but it's definitely it was pretty good. I was okay with it.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those where you just, I don't mind things not being tied up either. And I think some people I think there's just so many loose ends that it's hard to tie them all up. We won't get into too many Lost spoilers, but yeah, it was fun to kind of have that time in between to digest and reflect and think about things. Okay. So, but no shade on anyone who likes binging. That's
right.
That's cool. Yeah. But yeah, pretty good week. But also, anything else you can think of?
No, this has been a big blockbuster week. We had a lot of so many. I think you read 10. I might have read 9. It's I don't know what next week holds in store for us, but looking forward to it. I started getting a list because I feel the comic book store that I go to, like, I think he kept encouraging me to try to do a pull list, and then so whatever I like, I just add to it, and that way, whenever I go once a week or whatever, and I even called them to say, can you hold something for me?
Oh, really?
Because the guy said to do that, and he's like, it's fine. Anyway.
That's cool.
Yeah. Cause I was looking at what was coming out, and I knew that they had, certain issues. So I asked, but, no, it's been a good experience. I'm so far, I think this is the second or third time I've joined you, Steve. This is my third podcast with you as a quote unquote co-host. And I feel like we're getting the hang of it a little bit. And, it's been a pretty wild ride here.
Yeah, it's been fun. Oh, I'm so glad that you joined me, because it's so much funner having someone to talk to than just of myself. So
yeah,
no, it's fantastic. But cool, yeah. So we'll see what comes next week, and if anyone wants to track kind of our progress and what we're picking up, visit our forums at pagetoswing.com. Join our little community there, and if you'd like to join us, inquire there too. and love to chat. So I guess until next week, we'll talk to everyone soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.